Helena. I hope you're doing well. This is my final project for CTL 5312, and this is a very short presentation just on the process behind creating Finding You Inside, and just making a few class connections to the readings and making reference to a few possible activities that educators can incorporate with this story in class. Thank you. So my vision for this final project is to create a powerful multimodal story for kindergartner students as they reflect on their revolving identities and make connections with the text, the pictures, and the colors. So before heading into class connections, I wanted to illustrate the process behind writing Finding You Inside. So before I started to write, I wondered, why should I write such a book? What should the, context be? What was like a moral? What can students learn from this book that I wanted to write? And I really wanted to build on that idea of finding and exploring who you are, and for children to realize that, they can be anything and everything that they want to be, and to understand that it's okay to be who you are, and also for children to realize that they all have that potential, to be brave, to be inclusive, to be silly, and to be kind, and etc. However they are, they are free to be. Also, keeping this in mind, kindergartners are at that stage where they are starting to explore various identities through play. So reflecting back on Adair and Fabienne, they write that play is a path for interpreting and taking on identities in the classroom. So I wanted to create a book that, Finding You Inside, is something that is like a stepping stone for children to reenact and incorporate not only in their play, but in their lives as well. So they can be kind, inclusive, grumpy, helpful, and curious. It's who they are. Essentially, I wrote this book with the idea of setting the child's foundation of how they see themselves and others, and encouragement for them to be who they are. Another point behind the process is that statement, FYI, that's you hiding inside. So as you look through the book, I have used the statement many times, but not in context of saying that, children are shy to express and be themselves, but to encourage them to open their eyes, see their potential, their identities, their experiences, and how everything about them matters. Also, for children to see that they are more than what they think they are, and to encourage them to see that their thoughts and opinions and their voice also matters. And then another point behind the process was the images. So the images are all chosen from Canva, and they all portray children from various backgrounds, colors, race, special needs, disabilities, and different cultures. And this was my intention, to have images that, reflect children from within and beyond the classroom. Thomas and Stornaiolo write that for children to learn from a text, they need to see themselves inside books. So having them being represented in children's literature, for example, this book, Finding You Inside, either through the characters or the storyline, the setting, the colors used, it's sort of like an eye-opener for them, because in most cases, many of them have never read or seen a book with similarities to their lives. Lastly, I thought to myself, how could I make this powerful story multimodal? A little bit more multimodal than what I had initially thought. I decided to make the story to be a read aloud. And the book is like a video accompanied with an audio for a more multimodal read aloud experience. Also for fun, I decided to have rhyming words. In addition to the FYI statement, it's very repetitive, and I thought of it. I think that you as educators have that read aloud activity with their students. It can be used to engage students and have them say it along with the educator. And it's a sort of an engagement, encouraging children to engage as well. So these are just a few thoughts behind the process of creating this final project and the idea for the book, Finding You Inside. All right, so moving forward with a few class connections in reference to the literatures presented in class and Finding You Inside, this powerful story, encourages students to reflect on their social cultural relationships, their perspectives, and their revolving funds of identity as it creates and also create multimodal identity text for themselves. Also, through play, children tend to construct their identities and create characters when they assign roles, storylines, as they are reflective of their culture, their race, and society around them. Another connection is the textual toys by Dyson. And textual toys in the sense of images, dialogue, and visual plots that take communication resources and understanding and making meaning from a text. So, looking at the pictures of students sharing and playing together and interacting with each other, those are a few examples of textual toys that students can use and make meaning and make reflections of how they can incorporate this into their own play. Another connection is made by Moffat et al. So the story is meant for a read aloud activity, which is a very powerful tool in supporting and engaging young children's learning. Moffat et al. State that read alouds are social interactions that create a sense of belonging to a community and can be an opportunity to address social justice and inequality issues. So issues regarding race, gender, inequalities in opportunities. This is a great way to introduce and to maybe start those conversations with students using this powerful story. And the last connection we have here is to explore their literate identities through play and multimodal writing. So looking back in week 10, we spoke about, the definition of writing and how it should be expanded to designing, story making, and sharing new ideas. So as they use their identities, their time, the space around them, and their experiences to create and explore with different modes and materials through social interactions, they are also exploring their literate identities, through their play and through their writing and through their activities, and making connections back to Kubi et al. Onto multimodal communication, and here I asked myself, so how does a story use multimodal communications? And reflecting back to Charles and Boyle, they write that multimodality as a simultaneous reading, processing, producing, and interacting with modes such as graphics, print, sound, music, movement, and etc. So the story has, many images, there are visual, verbal signs, and where students can make connections to and reflect and interpret their identities. I'm no illustrator, but Taylor and Lung write that literacy is multimodal. So this picture book enhances multimodal literacy, as well as using the audio, using the text, using the colors. This is all part of multimodal communication. The use of images, the words and colors are visual and verbal signs that contribute to the meaning-making process. And this story is meant for a read-aloud activity, so where the teacher and students can make connections, have conversations, use gestures to understand and make meaning. And this then can happen through play as they reenact parts of the story while taking on new identities and then interpreting them and incorporating them into their play. All right, and moving into a quick analysis based off of Finding You Inside. So my intended audience is kindergarten, but this book can also be read for for students in kindergarten through grade 4. because I believe, children, they're at that stage where they're learning about adjectives and they're starting to express about themselves and expressing themselves. So it's a great way to start off maybe the class year. Also, reflecting on and exploring identity. So, reflecting on themselves, their interactions with each other and their peers, their environment, their society, the social aspect, and of course, their funds of identity. Next, we have is breaking barriers. So, breaking barriers, this story encourages students to break barriers against, the cultural, the religious, the societal, the racial, the gender norms and the stereotypes that many people and many children are experiencing now. But it encourages them to break those barriers and move past them, which leads into the next point of be yourself. Yes. So the intended aim of this powerful story is for students to be themselves and try to see what makes them them. Moving forward with practicing virtues and their values. So there's a lot of encouragement for students to practice their virtues, such as respect, inclusivity, being thankful, being kind. So allowing students to really see that within themselves, that they too can be, inclusive. They too can be respectful. They too can be kind, and makes them reflect on their identity and incorporate that into their identity and into their play as well. Another point, reflecting back to the story, is dealing with emotions and, having these emotions and having students understand it's okay to feel how you feel. It's all part of, life. It's okay to feel how you feel. And critical understanding, so encouraging students to participate in critical discussions about the world and environment and understanding themselves, the race, their skin color, backgrounds, their cultures, and etc., as well as addressing issues that revolve around them. So like inequality, social inequalities, the environment, climate change. There's so many things that that can be raised with powerful stories, that can be social injustices that can be discussed throughout a read aloud. Next is the sense of belonging. So yes, the story gives you that feeling of belonging and that idea that it's okay to be you. Related back to my own personal experience when I was afraid to show others who I am from a cultural aspect, and not really, I wouldn't say be ashamed of my culture, but back then I was very self-conscious about others knowing who I really am, and where I'm from, and the culture that I practice. So it's allowing students to really feel that it's okay to be whoever you are, however you are. We are here to support you, right? And we're glad that you are part of us. We're all here together. Another point here for the analysis is the language. So I chose language that students who are in kindergarten through to grade 4, they're students who can relate to the language, while also building on their vocabulary. So one of the word choice, so there has been a thought behind the word choice and acronyms like FYI, but I also had that at the beginning, so for students who did not know what FYI meant, they had an idea before starting off the story. Okay, multimodality in action. So this is just a slide where I just describe a few activities and how educators can use this read aloud in their classrooms. And the first part here is multimodal writing. So the use of journaling, having students journal, I am brave, using the vocabulary words that we experience through the powerful story and incorporating it with their journaling, whether it's, again, with the multimodal journaling, not only writing, but it could be drawing. And students can either write or draw or describe how they were, for example, brave one time, or how they were kind towards another, or how they respected someone. These are all, that's just a few examples. And another multimodal writing activity would be creating a narrative in a story play. So again, describing their experiences, being a kind person, describing a time when they were thankful, when they were honest, where they were inclusive. Those are great activities for educators to incorporate with the multimodal writing and the story. Another activity is play. So educators can have students create a drama or create a play about a specific term, or they reenact a time when they were experiencing this. So for example, creating a play about bravery, creating a play about a time when it was hard for you to make friends, and what did you do to try and make friends with others, or what did you do to include others in your group. So that was one aspect that educators can incorporate. And I put down artifacts because while students are participating in these multimodal activities, it's important for the educator to record these visible learning processes as picture writes. So the identity development is just seeing students as they grow from for example, from the beginning of the year throughout the end of the year, and by using the story to encourage them to be who they are and embrace their identity. So recording their identity growth, their development, and lastly, the educator can incorporate a goal activity. So you can have students say, okay, I'm going to try and be a little bit more courageous by the end of this week, or at the end of this month, for this month, I'm actually going to be a little bit more kinder towards my peers and those around me. So these are just a few ideas that educators can incorporate with this powerful story, Finding You Inside. And these are my references for the next 2 pages. Thank you so much for creating such an amazing class and for allowing us to embrace our creativity for this final project. I really enjoyed CTL 5312, and I hope to take more classes with you in the future. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation.